The real reason I haven't driven in over a decade. I don't drive. I haven't in over a decade, and when people ask me why, I have a million reasons I give them. I'm from New York, but now live in Wisconsin, so most of the time, I simply lie and say that I never learned, and that in New York, I easily got around with buses and cabs. I tell my husband it gives me panic attacks, which it does, but he doesn't understand why, because I've never told him so. For the first time ever, I'm going to explain why I don't drive and the source of the panic attacks it gives me. A little over 10 years ago, I was living in New York, just 30 minutes north of the city in Rockland County. Rockland has a lot of trees, forests, and is the home of the infamous Letchworth Village. This event has nothing to do with Letchworth, though. I was in my early 20s and was driving home from visiting my sister and decided to take a back road shortcut. It had just gone dark out. The road I was taking was very narrow and wooded on both sides. It had lots of twists and sharp turns. Being a young idiot and not seeing any other cars on the road, I was doing well past the speed limit and blasting music. The trip from my sister's house to mine via this road was around 10 minutes tops. The sharpest turn in the road came up and I barely slowed to take it. That's when it happened. Mid-turn, a figure looking like it was wearing a rain poncho. It had rained earlier in the evening very briefly, appeared right next to the driver's side of the car. It was tannish in color, and I thought I had just swiped someone crossing the wooded area at night. I slammed the brakes and skidded off the road, barely missing a tree. I knew I had just killed it, at least grievously wounded someone, if not that. I jumped out of the car and ran back to the area where it happened. Nothing. I had a flashlight on my keyring, a little but powerful LED, and I scanned the road looking for blood or anything else. What I saw was far too tall to have been an animal, and it was right next to my window at one point, so I knew I saw someone, no doubts. I ran to both sides of the road, seeing if the impact had thrown the person. That's when it hit me. I saw someone, was sure the car made contact but heard nothing. My music had been blasting, but I'm sure if I hit something, especially on the driver's side, I would have heard something. Now, the area was completely quiet, except for the cricket chirping. I listened hard for moans or any sign of someone injured. I must have spent 15 minutes looking up and down the road with my flashlight. I went back to my car to look for any signs of damage, because I was beginning to question my sanity. The car was fine, not a scratch, but I knew I hadn't imagined it. This didn't happen out of the corner of my eye. This was inches from me. I even thought about calling the police in hopes that if someone was hurt, they'd have a better chance finding them than me. I went back again, and this time I went past the tree line and the driver's side of the road, looking for anything. As I was running my light back and forth, trying to figure out what the fuck had just happened, I saw it. A wispy, tannish, almost foggy figure about 20 yards in front of me, in the woods. I can't say it was completely transparent, as I couldn't make out shapes behind it, but it was also not solid. I froze like a little bitch. I had no idea what I was looking at. At first, it was still, and before I could begin to figure out what it might be, it zipped behind a tree and disappeared. It wasn't a big, thick tree either where someone could dart behind it and take off, maintaining their steps behind its view. Also, this was towards the beginning of fall, and the ground was covered in crunchy leaves, but I heard nothing at all. Thank God no cars came, because I ran back across the road to my car without looking or caring, jumped in, and took off home. Now, part of me didn't want to believe what I saw, so for days I checked the newspaper ready to come forward if I found any report of someone getting hit on that road, or even a missing person in the area. Nothing. I continued to drive for about 6 to 7 months after this happened, but I started to have harsh panic attacks whenever I had to drive at night, and soon they rolled over to whenever I had to drive. Car keys in my hand even began to set off attacks. I went to the DMV, handed in my license, and got a state ID. As the years had gone by, the panic at the idea of driving has never subsided, not even a little. Living out in rural Wisconsin and not driving is a bitch, and I can't explain to those close to me why I won't simply get over my fear and just drive. Well, Not sure how to end this, so I'll just say that's my story. No idea what I saw or what exactly happened that night, but the fear of it has never left me, and I seriously doubt it ever will. The West Coast Road. Maybe some of the South African members or some who know the history of our country can help me with this one. About a month ago, a couple I and the husband are friends with, popped in one Saturday to tell us they were pregnant. To celebrate, we suggested we go for lunch. For some reason or the other, we suggested driving out of Cape Town for the special lunch, namely going out the Strandloper, somewhere close to Mykonos on the west coast. Okay, so after stopping by a farm stall for a snack after a tedious journey, we spotted the heavy rain clouds. My husband then suggested we cancel seeing, as you have to sit outside at the Strandloper. I have never been, and at this point, I start urging everyone to carry on with our trip. Eventually, they all agreed. As Murphy's Law would have it, just before we reach the Strandloper, it starts to pour, thunder, lightning, the works. Bored with our road trip, we decide to head back to Cape Town. By this time, it was completely dark. The cars were now fewer on the way home, as many people were enjoying their weekend in Mykonos. It was just myself and my female friend on the back seat. The guy sat up front. My friend's boyfriend had taken over the driving, much to my disapproval. He's a speed freak, while my husband sat up front with him, but was focused on his cell phone. I saw these lights flashing behind us, another car, I thought. Our driver did not move left to let the car pass. I knew our driver was a bit arrogant and stubborn on the road, but not enough to ignore a driver wanting to pass. Lots of road rage incidents in South Africa. I look back. There was nothing. I was probably that tired I imagined it. After a couple minutes, the lights of a car behind us flashed again. This time, both my friend and I on the backseat turned around to completely nothing. We looked at each other and shrugged. But again, our driver did not give way. I started to get a tad annoyed with our driver and asked if he was purposely trying to annoy the driver behind us. His reply sent chills down my spine. There is no car behind us. He eventually admitted, once we were safely at home, to seeing the lights flash behind us. I've always had this fear of that dark, lonely road. My older sister used to make me tag along when she would cart my brother and his family up and down to their place in town along that road. Can anyone help with this one? Glowing Cross of MILAN, Ohio. This story is one of only 2 paranormal experiences I've had in my life, which I can say is certifiably true. For 34 years old, that's enough time to accumulate many, especially being myself a very amateur ghost hunter, scary stories. But this one is one of the 2 that I would swear upon my sanity that is true. Coming from a small town, Piqua, Ohio. In 1994, I attended my freshman year of college at the University of Toledo. Before long, I had made several friends from around the state, and we took to making weekend road trips throughout the countrysides of nearby Michigan and the Lake Erie areas of Ohio. One of these friends happened to be from Norwalk, Ohio, and made mention several times of the glowing cross set to shine at nighttime in a small cemetery in the tiny village of Milan, which happened to be the birthplace of Thomas Edison. So, on that crisp autumn night, we grabbed our boombox and some deaf coffee and headed out for an all-nighter of rural exploration. I don't remember exactly where the cemetery was, but I'm very sure it was on the outskirts of the village. I also remember not expecting a single supernatural thing to happen to me in a million years. My friend, who had witnessed the glowing cross previously, much to my skepticism, brought us to a parking lot across the street from the graveyard, where he said, "You could best see it." Made no sense to me, but I went along with it. But yes, surely enough, in that early morning, late night stillness of a sleepy small town, there it was. I thought at first that it must have been a car passing somewhere nearby and glinting its lights off of the seemingly well-polished white cross a good couple hundred yards from us, but just as it went out, it came back on again. This time it stayed in its glowing haze for at least a minute before it lulled out, but within that minute, I became a believer. "You see that?" my pal asked, and I said, "Surely, yes." It was without a doubt something entirely of the supernatural and baffling to my somewhat skeptical sensibilities. Since that late-night road trip many years ago, I have heard of only one reference to this anomaly in some small press haunted Ohio book from a while ago. Anyone ever heard of this? I live in Oregon now and have so for years, but on some return trip back to Ohio, I plan to again, at least one more time, grab my boombox and head up towards the eerie little village, minutes away from the Great Lake. Was there a demon in our beach house? This is my experience on a family trip. I read a lot of posts about ghosts lately, and thought I'd share another story that I'd like some insight on. I've heard the distinguishing difference between ghosts and demons. It's that demons are able to physically interact with our world, whether it be through smell or moving things. Probably wrong, so please educate me. Anyways, here we go. This story begins in the summer before my freshman year of university in 2011. My brother and his now wife had just gotten engaged, and they decided to throw a beach getaway with both of their families so we could all get to know each other better. Her father was enthusiastic about taking charge of booking a place, as he knew the perfect beach house in Anna Maria Island, Florida. It was so close to the water, not to mention way cheaper than all the other rentals in the area. When my parents, sister, and I arrived at the house after a road trip, we were greeted by his fiance's family, who had stayed there the night before. When I stepped into the house, I was overcome by a very strong smell, almost like cinnamon, but not quite. A lot more musky and spicy than cinnamon. I figured it was just an old house and brushed it off. Her little sister Kay was really excited to give me a tour of the home, while everyone went grocery shopping or down by the water to check out the space. We snaked around the house, in and out of rooms, here's this, here's that, when we ultimately arrived at the master bedroom. As soon as I stepped into the room, I was smacked in the chest with a wave of cold, sad, territorial energy. The windows in the beach house were all open and the AC was off, yet this room managed to be about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. My eyes kept bouncing to the closet while she talked, saying, "This is where my parents are staying, and my dad really likes how cold it gets at night." All I knew is I needed to get as fuck out as soon as possible. I kind of rudely answered her with a "Great, yeah, sure, and let's go outside, yeah?" We walked outside, and I instantly felt better, free and upbeat, back to my old self. I hated the idea of this house being haunted, so I ignored it for my own good. The night sets in, and my brother mentions that the house smells weird, and I agree. We mention it to the others, and they all have no idea what smell we were talking about. Fast forward to room arrangements before bed. The house is only 2 rooms, and I volunteered to sleep on a blow-up mattress in the guest room walk-in closet. My parents take that bed, and my brother, his fiancée, and my sister sleep in the living room. Fiancé's family takes the creepy master room. The night goes well, no strange dreams I can remember, and I wake up to everyone in the house making lots of noise. It is around noon, and everyone's getting ready for the beach. I try to open my eyes, but I am met with the worst migraine of my life. My head hurts so bad that the light literally pains me, nauseates me, angers me. My mom tries to get me up, but quickly realizes I need to stay in bed. "We'll be at the beach today. You stay here and join us when you feel better, okay?" I groaned agreement and quickly fell back asleep. When I woke up, I was completely fine. It was only an hour later, and I felt fresh and clear like I never had a painful migraine only an hour before. I was more happy I could sit up without wanting to puke, so I sprung out of bed, threw on my swimsuit, and went to the kitchen for a muffin and a glass of water. Suddenly, I hear the sink in the bathroom turn on. Funny, I thought everyone was at the beach. I walked to the bathroom, the door wide open, to see who it was, thinking it might be Kay. "Hey Kay, wanna walk down to the beach together?" As soon as I duck my head into the bathroom, I see that it's empty, and the sink is on full blast. As I'm staring at the sink, I'm extremely confused. The lever lowers suddenly, and the stream cuts off. Holy shit! I turn around, filled with dread, grab my cell phone, and walk onto the front porch. I call my brother immediately. "See, I'm in the house and something really creepy just happened. Please come back. I need you to come here, please." I'm not sure why I asked him to come to the house and why I didn't just go to the beach to tell him. This is something I've thought a lot about. He comes to the house about 5 minutes later to me sitting on the porch, staring into space. He asked what's up, and I decide to take him into the house to explain why. Why not just tell him on the porch? I take him into the hallway where all the rooms meet, including the bathroom. While I tell him about the creepy incident, we hear a rattling noise behind him. We both look at the doorknobs of all 3 doors and quickly notice that they're all wiggling at the same time. He looks at me, excited and terrified, and nods that he completely believes me. "Let's go to the beach, don't tell fiancé, and we'll tell her when it's time. I don't want to scare her." We walk to the beach, kinda quiet, trying to wrap our heads around something seemingly illogical. We get to the beach and everyone can tell we are shaken, but we brush it off and say we're fine. We all spend about an hour and a half chilling by the ocean, enjoying the cloudy day of salty water and family. As we're having a great time, a few cop cars, people with shovels, and a giant yellow digging machine rolls up about 20 yards away. "What the hell?" Fiancé's dad says, standing to investigate. He walks over to the cops, and we can hear his voice getting quieter and more serious as the cops explain what's happening. He starts walking back to get to us and sits in his chair. "Apparently, they got an anonymous tip that the body of a missing woman was buried over there and he needs us to pack up and leave." Well, damn. At this point, my brother looks at me, and we mutually decide to tell his fiancée. I non-verbally signal I'm going to get her away from the group to tell her in private. While everyone is packing up, I ask her if she would walk with me to go take a shower to beat the rush. She agrees, and we start walking towards the house. I start feeling her out, asking how she felt about the house. I don't know, I feel just really odd, I guess. I don't feel like myself. I'm so angry and impatient with everyone, and I'm not sure why. This is a great place, and I'm so happy that we're all together, but I'm just frustrated. And what's up with the possible dead body at the end of our street? I feel like I'm in a crazy situation. I take this as an opportunity to explain what's going on. But before we get into the house this time, her eyes drew wide as I explained what just happened that day, and I saw it suddenly click for her. I knew it. We walked into the house, too busy just sharing a silent space to actually start showering. Her dad suddenly walks in, stomping into the house. "Hey girls! Don't you just love this room? Colder than all the other rooms, love it!" We look at each other, knowingly and ironically amused. He stomps back out with a fresh towel to help finish packing up at the beach. My brother immediately slinks in after, Big Eyes assessing the situation and sees we've talked about it. He immediately starts, "What the hell, right? I knew it smelled weird. I knew it was a weird place." While he says that, we hear a massive thump in the master room, like something big fell to the floor. We know it's a spirit. We know it's protesting us, calling the place weird. I decide to be brave because I'm a cocky 19-year-old girl and volunteer to shower in the master bathroom, secretly a bit more disturbed that the other bathroom gave me a very physical experience. I walk into the master room and see the thump was a lamp falling off the nightstand. I pick it up, glancing at the closet, and walk into the bathroom. I close the door and decide to undress in the shower and begin feeling very disturbed. I felt like I was being watched. It could have just been my emotions after a flustered day of weird shit, but I firmly believe something was watching me shower through the frosted glass. Needless to say, it's a quick shower. I get out, rush to my room, get dressed quickly, and couldn't join everyone in the living room fast enough. I elect to go outside to help with the barbecue, and I instantly feel better stepping across the threshold. Everyone takes a quick shower, and we're soon all eating dinner on the porch and chatting it up. The conversation dulls, and I decide to speak up. Has anyone had any weird experiences in this house? My brother shoots me with dagger eyes, but his fiancée speaks up. Weird things have been happening today and we would like to know. Everyone is quiet when her dad suddenly pipes up. Yeah, I know this place is haunted. It's actually really haunted, and we have stayed here a couple times, just so cheap. And we figured if we just left whatever it is alone, it'll just leave us alone too. My mom starts choking on her barbecue in disbelief. Like, what the shit kind of family is my son joining? Fiancé gets kind of flustered. So you invite everyone to a haunted house? I mean, whatever, he said. You're only spending tonight and you're leaving tomorrow, right? Thank God, I think. The night goes on, the spooky elephant in the room now addressed, and everyone just sort of obviously trying to be not too obviously disturbed. Time passes, and it's time for bed again. Fuck, if I'm sleeping in the closet again. I decide to take the bed, and Kay decides she doesn't want to sleep in the master bedroom anymore. My parents take the closet, Kay and I take the bed. We lay there, slowly warming up and start chittering and chattering girl talk, giggling louder as we hear snoring rise up from around the house. We talk about boys and plans for the future when suddenly we hear ruckus in the kitchen. Maybe it's your brother, she says. At this point, it's not my brother. The sound continues for about 5 minutes and it lulls to a stop. We start talking quieter, clearly afraid to be too loud. The sound starts up. It's like the plates are rattling in the cupboards, spoons are being dropped in the sink. I think about my brother, sister, fiancé sleeping in the living room. I hope they're okay. We fall asleep just staring at each other, listening to the show in the kitchen. When morning comes, I get the fuck out of bed, run into the kitchen and see everything in place. Everyone is starting to get up, and I check on my brother and fiancé in the living room. Everyone is fine. I get to a knee. Did you hear all that shit in the kitchen last night? My brother and his fiancée are laying in their blown up mattress and just sort of look at me. Hell yeah, we did. We thought it might be you or something, but we didn't actually want to look. Yeah, not me. This is the day we are leaving. We only spent 2 nights there, but I was so happy to be getting ready to go. It felt kind of like the house was lighter and happy that we were leaving too. The cinnamon smell kicked up again, and as I walked out, I yelled at the top of my lungs, I hope you find peace. My dad tosses my bag into her van. We pull out of the driveway, and I see Kay's worried face shrink in the distance. Her dad decided he wanted to spend one more night than we did, and she was going to be alone with her parents and whatever else was in there. She later reported it was just all noise at night, but it was a lot less active than when we were there. I searched the web looking for any found bodies at the beach in the summer of 2011, and I haven't found anything. I couldn't find anything about the house either, and can't tell if the incident is linked at all. All I know is that the rental was cheap for a reason. Thanks for listening. I will never forget this weekend. Any insight on what might have happened is welcome. Farmhouse in the KAROO. I would like to share with you another account from my Uncle Norman. This must have taken place in 1950 or 1951, as Norm had bought a new car, a gray Vanguard. He was delighted to have wheels for the first time in his life, eager to try it out on a road trip. Norm and a friend, I honestly can't remember his name, but let's call him Dirk, decides to visit my grand sister, Leela, in Cape Town. It was a long trip from Kimberley, and a good test for the car. Dirk had family, living somewhere in the Great KAROO, huge, arid tracts of land, miles and miles of nothing but scrub, with an acacia tree dotted here and dotted there. So they would have a place to stop over and spend the night. No hotels or sleeping in the car this time, and Dirk knew the way, so no getting lost either. Norm and Dirk planned their trip eagerly. Dirk assumed Norm that there would be no problem with a stay over at the farmhouse. All had been arranged per letter. There were very few house phones in those days, so very early one morning, they set out with picnic basket and coffee all packed. Their journey into the heart of the KAROO was uneventful, but not too boring. Along the way, they noted large herds of springbok and sheep grazing in the veldt fields. Now and then, they would pass a donkey cart piled high with firewood and friendly folk who waved. Occasionally, they would see a caracal or black-backed jackal dart across the road in front of them. They rolled up at the farmhouse before dusk and were greeted enthusiastically by Dirk's family. The warm smell of lamb stew, simmering on the hob, assailed their nostrils. Soon they sat down with the family in the large kitchen to eat and exchange news. Lamps were lit, and talk went on into the night. There was still no electricity in outlying areas such as these. When bedtime eventually came, the man of the house apologized to Norm for not having a guest room. Would Norm mind sleeping in the enclosed stope? Norm replied that he would not mind at all, being grateful that he would have a bed to sleep in and a roof over his head. Everyone went off to bed. Norm found that the single bed was quite comfortable, and soon drifted off to sleep, being rather tired after his day of driving. Not long after he had fallen asleep, he was awakened by the cold. He discovered that his sheet and blanket had fallen to the ground. He leaned out of bed, retrieving the bedclothes, and fell asleep once more. Not too long after, he was again awakened by intense chill to find the bedclothes once more on the floor. This time, Norm suspected that his pal was playing tricks on him and looked inside the doorway to the room to see if he could see anyone. Nobody was around. This time, Norm made the bed properly, making sure that the blanket and sheet were all tucked well in, slid down into the bed, made sure that he didn't untuck the bedclothes, and went to sleep again. Sometime later, he woke again to find his cover on the floor. By now, he was sure that Dirk or one of the family members was pulling a prank on him. He proceeded to wrap himself up like a mummy in the bedclothes and slept well until dawn. The next morning, while sitting down to a great breakfast of mutton chops, fried eggs, freshly baked bread with farm butter and fruit, the family asked as how Norm had slept. Norm thought, "Aha, here it comes." He replied that he had slept very well, not giving them a glimmer of the night's disturbances. The farm folk looked surprised and looked confused at one another, while Norm grinned inwardly, till they told him that he was the first person in years to spend the whole night sleeping on the stope. Only then was the whole story trotted out. The grandfather of the family had always slept on the stope. One dark night, a native farm laborer had crept up and murdered the old man in his bed. Ever since then, nobody could get a peaceful night's rest there. In my opinion, I think that was pretty scurvy of them to put a poor unsuspecting visitor to sleep in that enclosed veranda. What say you?